You ever have one of those days when nothing is technically wrong, but everything just feels heavy? Like you did what you were supposed to do. You showed up, you answered the emails, you dealt with people, you held it together. And by the time the day finally slows down, there's this quiet exhaustion just sitting in your chest. You open your phone without thinking. Maybe you tell yourself you're just checking the time or replying to one last message, but somehow you're scrolling. Shoes, tech, food delivery, a jacket you absolutely don't need but suddenly really want. And before you even notice it happening, that thought shows up. I deserve this. Not loud, not dramatic, just reasonable, calm, almost responsible sounding. And honestly, in that moment, it feels true. I know that feeling really well. I'm Marcus, and I spend an embarrassing amount of time thinking about money, human behavior, and why so many smart, hardworking people feel like they're doing everything right and still feel tense about their finances all the time. Because I deserve this spending doesn't feel reckless. It doesn't feel like bad money behavior. It feels like balance, like self-care, like you're finally giving yourself something back after a long day of being disciplined. But here's the uncomfortable part. That sentence, that exact thought, has quietly delayed more goals, stretched more paychecks, and created more background stress than almost any obvious bad habit ever could. Not because people are careless, but because this kind of spending isn't really about the thing you're buying. It's about relief. It's about pressure. It's about trying to even the score between how much life is asking from you and how much it feels like you're getting back. So today, I want to talk about the psychology behind "I deserve this" spending, why it shows up when it does, why it feels justified even when it hurts you later, and how understanding it, really understanding it, can quietly change how money feels in your life. Not in a preachy way, not in a never enjoy anything again way, just an honest conversation about what's actually happening in your head and how to stop this pattern from running your finances in the background. Here's the tricky part about this kind of spending. It doesn't feel impulsive. You're not throwing money around. You're not maxing out cards at 2 a.m. Most of the time, you're calm, rational. You've thought about it, at least a little. And usually, you can explain it really well. I've been good all week. I barely buy anything for myself. I work hard. It's not even that expensive. And honestly, the logic checks out. On the surface, it really does. Because your brain isn't evaluating the purchase in isolation. It's evaluating it emotionally. What you're really doing in that moment is compensating, not for a lack of money, but for a lack of reward. Think about how many parts of your day are spent doing things you don't actually enjoy, meetings you don't care about, traffic, obligations, delayed gratification, holding your tongue, being responsible. Your brain keeps track of that, quietly, and when it feels like the effort-reward balance is off, it looks for a shortcut, something immediate, something tangible, something that says, okay, here's your payoff. That's when spending becomes emotional regulation, not entertainment, not pleasure, regulation. And that's why it feels deserved. Every "I deserve this" purchase has two prices. The obvious one, the dollars leaving your account, and the invisible one, the future pressure it creates. But your brain only sees the first half. Right now, you get relief, a hit of dopamine, a sense of control, a tiny emotional exhale. It's like loosening a tie after a long day. The second half, that doesn't register yet, because future stress doesn't feel real in the moment. Future you is abstract, hypothetical, almost a stranger. So the transaction looks like this in your head: stress, purchase, relief. Clean, simple, effective. What your brain doesn't fully calculate is this: stress, purchase, temporary relief, slightly tighter finances, more pressure later, a stronger urge to deserve something again. And that loop can run for years without ever looking dramatic. That's why this pattern is so dangerous, not because it ruins people overnight, but because it quietly taxes every future decision. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. "I deserve this" spending doesn't peak when people are broke. When you're truly broke, there's fear, urgency, constraint. Every dollar has weight. Spending feels loud, risky. You feel it immediately. But this pattern doesn't live there. It lives in that weird middle zone, when the bills are paid, when the paycheck is consistent, when the lights are on and the fridge isn't empty. Nothing is on fire, but nothing feels solid either. And that middle zone is exhausting in a way that people don't talk about, Because you're responsible enough to worry, but not comfortable enough to relax. You're constantly aware of money without ever being able to enjoy it. You check your balance, not because it's low, but because it's close. Close enough to breathe, but not enough to forget about it. So your brain stays half alert all the time, not panicked, not calm, just tense. You don't feel like you're failing, but you don't feel like you're winning either. You feel like you're maintaining, and maintenance doesn't feel rewarding. There's no finish line, no sense of arrival, just a quiet pressure to keep everything from slipping. So when you finally get a moment where nothing urgent is happening, late at night, after work, scrolling on your phone, your brain looks for a release valve, something that says, okay, we're safe for now. And spending becomes that release, not because you're reckless, but because you're tired of holding everything together. You can't fully enjoy your money because one unexpected expense could throw things off. But you also can't fully deprive yourself because that feels unfair after how hard you're trying. So your brain compromises, not with big splurges, not with dramatic decisions, with small rewards, frequent treats, controlled indulgence, a meal out instead of cooking, a delivery fee you don't really need to pay, something on sale that you weren't planning to buy but suddenly feels justified. It feels balanced, reasonable, earned. And that's the danger, because this isn't chaos, it's coping. It's how your brain manages the emotional tax of being almost okay for too long. That's why telling people to just stop spending never works, because from the inside, it doesn't feel like overspending. It feels like survival with a smile on it.
A lot of people blame themselves. I just need more discipline. I'm bad with money. I should know better. But willpower isn't the issue, because this behavior usually shows up when willpower is already depleted. At the end of the day, after stress, after restraint, after being good, your brain is tired. Your emotional defenses are down. So asking yourself to make a perfectly rational financial decision in that moment is like asking someone to meal prep while they're starving. It's not that you don't know what to do, it's that the context is stacked against you. I deserve this spending doesn't usually wreck your finances. It delays your stability. It keeps you hovering just close enough to comfort that you never feel urgent, but never far enough that you feel safe. Savings grow slowly, if at all. Buffers stay thin. Slack never fully forms. And without slack, every unexpected expense feels personal, like a failure, like bad luck, like proof you can't get ahead. So the pressure stays, and when pressure stays, the cycle repeats. What actually breaks the pattern? The solution isn't deprivation, and it's definitely not guilt. The solution is understanding what your spending is trying to do for you. Because once you see that clearly, you can replace the function, not just suppress the behavior. If spending is giving you relief, you need other forms of relief that don't create future pressure. If spending is giving you control, you need areas of life where control is visible and real. If spending is compensating for exhaustion, you need rest, not rewards. And if spending is your only way of saying, I get something for myself, of course it feels deserved. The biggest shift isn't learning to say no. It's building enough financial slack that saying no doesn't feel like punishment. When you have a buffer, real breathing room, decisions feel different. You don't need constant rewards because your baseline stress is lower. You don't feel deprived because your future feels protected. You stop negotiating with yourself every night, and suddenly, I deserve this loses its urgency. Not because you're stronger, but because you're calmer. Instead of asking, do I deserve this? Try asking something softer. What problem am I trying to solve right now? Sometimes the answer is hunger, sometimes boredom, sometimes stress, sometimes loneliness, and sometimes, yeah, it really is enjoyment. But separating the need from the purchase gives you power back, because once you know the problem, you can choose the best solution, not just the fastest one. Let me be really clear. Enjoying your money matters. Celebration matters. Pleasure matters. Reward matters. The goal isn't to eliminate I deserve this. The goal is to make sure it's coming from a grounded place, not a pressured one, because when spending comes from calm, it feels good and ages well. When it comes from stress, it expires fast. If this way of thinking about money feels familiar, if it made you pause or recognize yourself, that's not a bad thing. It just means you're paying attention, and paying attention is where real change starts. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need extreme rules. You don't need guilt. You just need a little space between pressure and reaction. That space, that's where stability lives. And if you want to keep having conversations like this about money, behavior, and the quiet shifts that actually change how life feels over time, you're welcome to stick around. No hype, no shortcuts, just honest thinking. If subscribing feels right, it's there. If not, that's okay too. Either way, take care of yourself, because stability comes before everything else.